Hello and welcome to episode 41 of the TRUUMAN Podcast, the podcast designed to create a generation of self-defined men. Today, I'm joined by Joe Gray, the founder of MyoMaster and also a rugby player. Joe, thank you so much for being with me today. How are you?
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm very well. I asked you how to pronounce your surname and messed up your first name, so that that was a great start. So, Joe, with this podcast, we always start with my favorite question, which is, in your own words, what makes you a man?
Um, I suppose, in my own words, it's the ability to provide for the ones I love. So being able to um, give some security to my loved ones and try and lead by example to give them someone to look up to.
Awesome. And, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit more about MyoMaster?
So my master's company I founded with my wife about 4 years ago now, and it's a human optimization company that basically we created, as I say, about 4 years ago through my own injuries. I had lots of injuries throughout rugby. I had 15 operations, and it's obviously elite level sport, so there was lots of pressure on you getting back, making sure you're fit to perform at your best, and most of the time you're playing injured and hurt, and I was frustrated after being injured for a chunk of time. So I went out my way and sort of created this handheld device that's now seen as a massage gun. But 5, 6 years ago, they didn't even exist. So that was the initial seed of MyoMaster. My dad was an engineer, so I'm quite sort of hands-on and like to play around and fix issues. And if I have problems, I like to try and figure out how I can make it easier for myself. And that was the beginning of our company. My wife came on board. She's a city was a big wig in the city and had some marketing background. So we put our heads together and we created MyoMaster, which we launched about 4 years ago, and it's gone from strength to strength. And yeah, now we're human optimization, and we do anything from cold water immersion to massage to percussion to everything you can think of, really.
Awesome. Well, it's a growing industry, right? And there's definitely bigger trends sort of taking over this space and your space as well in regards to sort of like ice baths and that sort of thing. They're becoming more popular in the mainstream as well.
Definitely, there's a lot more education on them and a lot more Instagrammable content available. So people obviously always share when they've done a hard thing like an ice bath, which is exceptionally cold. So it's obviously got a lot of reach around that, but also around the science behind it and how beneficial it is for you.
Yeah, awesome. So, Joe, if you don't mind, I'd love to get an understanding of elite level sport and sort of the pressures outside of what people see from those 80 minutes. So, you talked about a number of injuries that you went through. Can you talk maybe
Yeah.
about one in particular?
Yep, so I had a huge injury before my career started. So basically, I went to a comprehensive school in Nottingham. I didn't play rugby. I grew up at my local rugby club, saw my brother play when I was 8, wanted to join in the session. He's a few years older, loved it. So me and my cousin got involved at 8 years old, and I fell in love with the sport. And my mum still has a picture that I drew when I grew up. I want to be a rugby player. And back then, it wasn't a professional sport, so it was just a hobby, really, and an amateur at the best. Obviously, as I started growing up, it turned professional. But I had to basically write a CV, send it out to all these professional clubs, try and get a trial. I wasn't in the private school system where you got put into these feeder systems. But I was lucky enough to play representative. So I played for England under 16s, and then I played for 18s while I was 16 and got through the system that way, but still wasn't picked up by anybody. So I basically wrote a CV, got a trial, managed to get offered a contract by Northampton Saints, which was a dream come true. And the following day I had an horrific injury where I dislocated my knee and my foot was under my armpit, and I basically, the knee swung out where my shin bone is and it all came underneath me in a tackle. So I landed on my own leg while my leg was straight, which was, yeah, pretty horrific, as you can imagine, being a 17-year-old lad. Um, and they were writing up the contract. I'm going to send it Monday, and this was on the Saturday before they'd done that. So I went to the hospital and had about 12 doctors run in and see me, and then go and get more doctors because they said you'll never see anything like this. It's like a car crash injury. I had to have loads of tests to see if I had to amputate from the knee down because you have main blood artery going through your knee, and because of the angle my leg had gone. They thought I might have ruptured, but thankfully I was young and it sort of bent round weirdly with it. And then I saw the specialist and I had a multi-ligament operation, which was everything in your knee, all four ligaments, meniscus, cartilage, everything had gone. So they had to do a couple of really big operations and they said, you won't play rugby again. That's the end of that. And you'll be lucky to run again. But thankfully I've fought off a lot of them odds and I had a really good surgery, which went successfully, and I was very determined. And I spent 18 months learning to walk, run, build up strength in it, do a shed load of rehab, and basically, as a result, got back to play rugby at 18. And a few months after being back, I started playing first team rugby at Northampton Saints, which was pretty rare as an 18-year-old. So yeah, that was the beginning of my career.
It's definitely a brutal sport, right? You definitely put your body on the line. In regards to that, and you got to did you keep the contract? Was that how that kept? Or was it like if
Yeah,
you?
so actually, my coach was unbelievable. So he came and actually chatted to me and said, I've been told by several doctors I'll never play again. And I went on to represent Scotland A team and play in the Premiership however many times. And he said, they don't really understand who we are as rugby players and that we're a different breed of people. So, it obviously hit me quite hard that I got told I wouldn't play again and that my contract hadn't been signed. And he basically said, once you can walk, come to Northampton and we'll look after you, but we can't pay you. So what I did was I moved to Northampton in an academy house that was covered, but I didn't get any money. So at the end of each training day, when the lads would go home and play the computer and chill out, I'd go to a local school and coach rugby to get paid. So that's how my first year worked. And then once I was back fit at the end of that season, I then got offered my contract for the following season.
Okay, so it's they wanted to keep you close just in case you became the star that you were at the beginning when they saw you at that side. It's
Yeah, but what was really amazing was that they had no obligation. So I was a lad who wrote a CV. I wasn't through their academy system. I hadn't done anything, and they'd seen me play 4 or 5 games, and literally they could have been like, "Good luck with that. It's a really tough injury." But I hadn't signed a piece of paper, done anything. So I thought it was incredible that they actually stuck by me through that time because so many other people would have just been like, "Oh, that's a really bad one. There's no chance," and sort of called it a day. So I was very lucky to have that coach in particular called Rob Hunter, who's the Exeter forwards coach now, but he's incredible. Yeah.
I imagine it was specifically him as a coach because a lot of athletes it is a lot of a spit up and chew and spit out kind of cycle for them. If you're good enough and you're
Definitely.
fit enough, you can play. But it sounds like you had a good one there.
Definitely, yeah, yeah, it's unbelievable.
Amazing. So, in those sort of early days, what were you thinking? Were you just thinking, I need to get back fit, I need to play rugby? Did you still have that dream of what you'd done as a kid? What was that like?
Yeah, no, so I still had the dream, but I was obviously very nervous because basically when I did my knee, I fell over my knee, so I saw it all twist and snap and pop all in the wrong direction, and obviously horrendous. So I kept having like nightmares and worrying about that through the early days, and then basically had to have the big operations, and then from that, like you can't bend your knee. It's like in a hinged brace for 6 months. So then I did loads of small goals. So the first thing was like to get my knee bend back as best as I could. So I started to obviously do the exercise of trying to get my knee bend back, and then from there I was on crutches for 6 months. So then your next goal was, can I get back walking? Can I get to one crutch? Can I then get walking? Once I got walking, can I get cycling? Then can I start rehabbing a bit more weight? And then I got told that the only way for me to play professional rugby was for me to get my um, leg strength into 10% range of my other leg. So basically, that I had a special test to do it, but I did a test at 6 months and it was 400% weaker. So then my goal became how I start to chip away at that because that seemed a pretty big mountain. But each time I did small goals, I didn't go for the big goal of, right, I'm going to play here. I got told it will probably take you around 18 months and you need to clear these hurdles along the way. So every time there's a new goal, and I probably had 10 to 12 mini goals within that period that I had to hit to get to the next progression. So that was how I sort of did it each time.
That's a really nice way of doing it. I imagine they were literally mini goals. You didn't set them all out in a big long list. It was just a
Yeah,
case today I need to do this, and that sort of goes back to that thing that you said that rugby players are a different breed. I think resilience seems to be built into you guys. is that something you learn, or is it genuinely you are just built different?
No, it's definitely a learned skill. And as you said a minute ago, like all rugby's a tough sport and it's physical and you'll get injuries. And I suppose that's how you build that resilience because I don't know any rugby player that hasn't had injuries. So for a huge period of your career or your time playing the sport that you love, you'll spend on the sideline watching other people play it and struggle to get back to it. And then you'll have form, you'll have no form, you'll have coaches that like you, coaches that don't like you, you'll be selected, unselected. So throughout your whole sort of career of the sport you love, you've got ups and downs continuously. And I think rugby's more than most. Like lots of my friends play football and might occasionally roll an ankle, or some are in athletics and might pull a hamstring. But I'd have like four injuries a year, probably almost every off season of my professional career. At 16 years, I had an operation to fix something that I struggled with the whole season. So then you have a cycle of trying to get back again from that by yourself, doing all the rehab and in the gym while no one else is in there because the team does it and then the injured boys do. So you get a lot of exposure to become resilient. Otherwise, if you're not, you just don't play again. It's too tough. So
Yeah. And I guess you touched on another little bit there, the injured boys. So what's your view on team sport as a whole for individuals?
yeah, I think team sports sort of best sport there is because obviously I played it and the ability to have 60 people around you in a rugby environment who are exceptionally close. You form a sort of brotherhood because you go into a battle of a physical, intense battle and you rely on your friends either side of you to cover your back if you make mistakes, etc. I think it's a really hard shift when you become injured because all of a sudden you're taken out of that environment to do your own rehab, to see the physio by yourself around times when the first team boys aren't getting treatment for their niggles. So generally you're in the club at a different time to everybody else and you're doing your work at different times to everybody else. So you might become a friend with like maybe one person who's injured with a similar injury at that time, who you sort of lean on a bit. But it's, yeah, all of a sudden goes from this team environment where you're surrounded by people having an unbelievable sort of banter and laugh and work together to all of a sudden being quite an individual moment for you.
Okay. And like sort of I guess with you you had quite a tough career essentially because it was injury ridden from day one. And also something else that you touched on was that it was only just really becoming a professional sport. So I imagine pay was not the craziest sort of side of things. What
Yeah,
would you sort of were there any thoughts about that as you were going through your career? Like this could end at any stage. What do I do next?
constantly. Yeah, so it was a constant. Obviously, as you said, when did it turn pro? Probably 9 years, 8 years before I started. So it was still on the lower level of earnings, and if you had a good career, you'd earn probably a normal salary of someone with a decent job. If you're a superstar player, you'd be on good money for a couple of years, and then it'd drop off. And if you're a squad player, you'd be on 30, 40 grand for your whole career, really. So it was yeah, I was conscious constantly that I was one tackle away of not playing again. So it was obviously that thought of that first injury made that very constant in my mind. So I was very proactive compared to other friends of mine who would go home and play Xbox and chill out every night and go to cinema. I was quite proactive that I'd get my coaching badges so that I could coach possibly. I went to night college to become a carpenter and did that for 2 years. I did a lot of things outside of rugby to try and give myself the best opportunity that if I did have a career-ending injury or I didn't get re-signed because of form or a contract, then I had an option to try and do something else.
Yeah, it's well, it's good that you were sort of proactive in it. In another world, I had a business where I worked with athletes to sort of create a career after sport. So because of literally what you were saying, it's like you're either on a basic wage and then you go into the real world and you're in your thirties and you've got nothing.
Yeah, you're starting again, really. So.
So that was it's good that you were proactive. I guess is there something that you potentially would say to yourself starting out, or someone who not necessarily in sport, but someone who's trying to pursue a passion and something that they drew on a piece of paper as a kid as well, that what
Yeah.
they can do alongside to make sure that they one are sort of a bit more mentally stable and two some other options out there as well.
Yeah, so I think there's two ways to look at it. So from my professional sports side, I always wanted to be a professional sportsman, so I put 100% into that. So I made sure I trained the hardest I could. I recovered well. I did all that, but you do have a lot of time around that world because of how much you can train. So you do have spare time to be able to do a part-time degree or do some work experience on your day off or go to night college like I did for carpentry, and it didn't affect my performance at all. Actually, I think it made me better because when I was there, I was very honed in on what I was doing compared to just sitting and sort of playing an Xbox or something. The other side is, as I got older, the sort of building my master was that I didn't just quit my full-time job and go straight my master. It was a side hustle for a long time to build it up, to make sure there was a market fit, to make sure we had some customers and made sure that it was obviously a viable business before my wife then made the leap from the city to going full time mine master before we hired our um, first people into the business. So it took several years of a side hustle to get to that point. And I think sometimes people don't think it's the right time to start what they want to do and sort of hold it off, or they go, I'm going fully all in. I think there's an in between where you can start as a side hustle and you can test them, iterate, make sure you're comfortable with what you're doing, and then make the leap of faith once you've got a little bit of backing and understanding of what you're doing.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room for dipping your toe in these sort of things. I think
Yeah.
it can be you can be drawn in from social media and these people that are perceived to be doing so well, who have these unbelievably cheap courses that are going to revolutionize
Yeah.
your skill set in 8 weeks and make you a millionaire. But I think it's apparent that the hard work is where it's at, and you need to find a balance if you're going to make that change. For most people, I think some people can't.
Definitely. I think like it's one in a billion, like unicorn status that is an overnight success. The majority of everyone I've ever met, everyone I know, everything I've listened to is a long grind to get it to the point where it looks like it's an overnight success, but actually in the background it's been going on for a long, long time with a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work. And my life in rugby and business has been no different. It's a lot of hard work to get you to the point you want to be.
Yeah. So I guess on the side of like that societal pressure of like trying to be the next big thing, or trying to sort of skip the queue, so to speak, and try and get to the top first. As a young sort of rugby player, getting paid maybe a little bit more than your peers that were sort of a certain age, or
Yeah,
as you sort of got up, and it gets to the point where you're earning a bit more and a bit of a decent wage. Like,
yeah.
how do you teach yourself, or how do you have control under the sense that this is a short career and this isn't forever and I have to change things like that? How do you not get pressured into that side of things?
Yeah, so again, I think I was quite switched on as a young individual. So I was very conscious that I wanted to save if I could, and once I started earning a bit better, get a house was like number one. Can I get a deposit for a house? Can I get on the ladder? I know all my friends are struggling to do that with their normal jobs, and I'm in a unique position where I'll have a few years of hopefully good pay before I get injured or I get older and it drops back down, which is what happened. I got older, I had a few years of decent pay, and then it dropped back down, and I was out of the international scene, and I was gone, but I had enough sort of sense to save up for a deposit, get a house, get on the ladder, um, which was awesome. Lots of my friends did the opposite, which young lads do, and just went out every weekend, partied, had amazing holidays, went and just spent a lot of that money. And then once it started to drop, panicked and was like, oh my God, I need to get a house or do something with what I've done in my career. And then they went hard for a year or two and saved enough to get on the housing ladder. But yeah, I was pretty switched on with it just because I'd seen my mum and dad work really hard from a working class background in Nottingham, and how hard they had to work for everything. And we weren't the type of family that went out every weekend to eat and went abroad all the time and stuff like that. So I was very conscious they have my head screwed on right that like if you can get a property, it'll be amazing in the long run. And then if you can save along that, then you'll have options later down the line.
It's it's testament to you and to the comprehensive sort of school and that side of things, that it keeps you a little bit grounded when you go to the big scene and start to do those things, which is nice to see. One thing that you keep mentioning is like micro goals. So I want to get an understanding of whether that's something that you still do and what that looks for you right now.
Yeah, it's definitely something I still do. So I do it in basically all areas of my life. So um, from training just to make myself feel better mentally and physically look better. I don't go in a year's time I'm going to look like this. I might go in a year's time I'd like to look like this, but what that will look like is I'm going to train every day for the next month and then check in and see how I'm going there. And I'll train every day for the next month and then check in and I'll be like, okay, I'm a bit tired. Now I'm going to train 6 days a week instead of 7 because actually I'm getting a bit niggles. And I start to change my micro goals to try and get to that end goal of 12 months time or 6 months time. Within business, we do it on a monthly check-in with what our goal is for that month. And we have a yearly goal in terms of revenue, audience, how many customers we have, etc. But that looks outrageous at the beginning of the year. And you look at that big number, what you're aiming for. So you can't just aim for the big number. We have a goal of what our weekly target is. Then that rolls into our monthly target, then our quarterly target. And then we check in each week to check where we are on that sort of scope. And if we need to tweak things or change things, how we can improve constantly. So yeah, I do micro goals all the time. It's something I've done for a long time. Probably through the injury piece that just works well for me, that if I have little goals, I know I can tick them off my list rather than one big goal can be a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's definitely the way to do it. I've almost gone the complete opposite of that. Well, not the opposite, even more into narrow. Over the last sort of couple of weeks, I've taken goals for the week and turned them into literally what is the smallest thing that I can do on that today for this first 3 minutes and start to work
Yeah,
through
I
it
love
that way. I think I might have some form of ADHD, but it's working for me.
that.
So
Yeah, that's great.
we'll
Sounds
stick
really good.
now. It's working. We're getting productive, so it's good. Um, but yeah, for me, the smaller the goal, the better it is. I mean, a lot of people like this visualization of big goals and that side of things, and I think they're important, right? But you've got to do the work to get there, which is something we've sort of
Totally. Totally. And as a young lad, I had the big vision. And as a 10, 12-year-old, I'd say, I'm going to play for England, I'm going to play for my country and be the best in the world in my position and all these incredible dreams that you have as a kid. Um, but then I did break it all down and go, well, what do I need to do to be the best in the world in my position? And as a hooker, which is what I was, I had the individual skill of throwing the ball into a line out. So every night for an hour, I went down to the park and I threw at a lamppost. And I was known as the weird kid who threw the ball at a lamppost every night. And the lamppost was broke because I got good at doing it. But my mates then understood that. And when they went down the park drinking at 16, I was throwing at a lamppost for an hour before. And I wouldn't drink. I was J2O, but then I'd go and see them and hang out and chat. But they knew for an hour I had to do that because my aim is to go and do something different.
J2O Joe. Okay.
J2O for many years. But again, that was a self thing. I loved going out drinking with my friends. So I gave myself my birthday and New Year's. Because I wanted to give myself a differentiator from what everyone else was doing. And when I went to rugby camps or when I went into academy and stuff, everyone went on the piss every weekend. They went drinking, and I was like, what can differentiate me is I don't do that except for these couple of years until when I become a first team player and I've made it to the level I want to be, then I can enjoy myself. And once I got to that level and started playing regularly, I did go out and start enjoying myself every other week and stuff. But for a long time, I sacrificed that so that I had an advantage on other people.
I was going to say there tends to be a stigma of a big drinking culture around rugby from all levels. Really, I think it's only over the past couple of years really turned into a professional sport in the fullest sense, where the top tier aren't really drinking as much as they used to. But I think it was pretty prevalent for quite a while still.
Yeah, I can agree. It was a good boozing culture after games, especially on the bus or with a good win.
Well, deserved, right? Especially if you're throwing your body around as well. It's I think you can be forgiven for trying to numb some of the
pain. Exactly.
On that side of culture and those things in rugby, can I touch on sort of like well-being and mental health and what if there was anything that you found during your period within sort of the rugby scene, because it is given a bit of a bad rap. We have like toxic masculinity, typical rugby guy within universities, but like, what does that look like further up the ladder, so to speak?
So I'd say from a younger age, so when I went into academy in 2007, 2008, like a long time ago now, but it didn't exist. It was very much like, come on, you've got a knock, like carry on, you'll be fine. And it was very macho, like you say, like it was expected that you get hurt, you get up, you carry on, and if you have a bad game, you'll get lit up in a meeting and you deal with it and you get better or you get out. Like, and that was what was expected. And um, again, probably built some of the resilience I've got in my life. But it was also seen, which in today's rugby world is totally different. I'm lucky enough to still be in at Harlequins and I've been in England camps and things recently. But back then, you make a choice. Do you want to be a rugby player or do you want to go to university? Because you can't do both. Whereas now, it's very much you have somebody in at the club trying to help you get a university degree alongside rugby to find other things you can do outside of rugby to get you prepped as best as you can for after rugby. You have people you can talk to. If you have mental health issues, you can have therapist sessions. You can do lots of things that did not exist when I started in the game. It was very much a macho, do this or don't play. So it's transitioned a lot over the years, and I say the last 10 years it's got better and better and better. And what's been really good is that some of the best clubs in the world that have performed at the highest level were the first to integrate that. So it actually dripped down as a really good way to actually get high performers. So that was really good that basically the teams that were performing were doing it and other teams copied because they want to obviously increase their performance as well.
Yeah, it's I'm really torn. I don't know what your views are on this. Like I'm a big fan of like banter and being part of a team and where everything's equal. I understand the difference between banter and bullying. I think banter is
Yeah.
very easy to differentiate. But I'm also now in this space and I absolutely love it and I'm really pro people talking about things and having that thing. Where do you sit on it? Because it's everyone has their own opinion, right?
Yeah. No, I'm the exact same as you. I think there is a clear line between the two, especially if you've grown up in that environment. You understand banter and having a laugh, and I think you also understand who likes banter and who doesn't. So you can quite quickly gauge if someone's engaging with the banter and having a laugh and coming back at you, and it's to and fro, which I really enjoyed in the rugby world. So I had the mick taken at me constantly, but I loved giving it back and would really enjoy that side. But then as you say, it's very clear to see if it crosses to bullying and it's affecting somebody or upsetting them, then that's a different thing. And thankfully, I didn't really see that very often at all. I saw it once or twice, and generally people stood up and said you shouldn't do that to the person doing it. So overall, I've been lucky enough to see the banter side more. But I do think it's an important point you raised that obviously there is clear boundaries between the two, and making sure people understand that.
What about the difference between sort of a well-being side to a team and let's say the hairdryer? So if you're not good enough, get out compared to
Yeah.
nurturing.
Again, had both sides and both work in different ways. So in my early career, it's very much the hairdryer, get out. If you don't fight, you're not meant to be here. And that was what that coach wanted. And that coach wanted basically a team of physical, aggressive, verging, like not bullies, but they would stand up and they weren't afraid to go toe to toe and throw a punch if needed and all that stuff. And that really wasn't me. So I'm like a fun loving, jokey guy. So I did not fit into that environment particularly well in my early years. So then I moved clubs and I moved over to Harlequins with a totally different coach, totally different mindset, very fun, very nurture. Let's make us all better. He took the blame if anything ever went wrong. So in interviews post games, he would say if the performance was bad, it was on him because of X, Y, Z. Never threw the players sort of under the bus, and that was perfect for me. But what I opened my eyes to in a sporting world is coaching is just one man's opinion. So they have an opinion on how they want to coach, and they have an opinion on the player they want to pick or the person they want in their squad. And now I do rugby coaching. I'm the same. It's one man's opinion. So I'm going to have an opinion on who I want, why I want them, compared to somebody else who could have a totally different one. But both work. I just think it depends how you excel. So I left that club because I didn't like that style. Other people went there because they performed well under that style and enjoyed it. So I think it depends basically who you are.
I think you touched on one of the key points, which is you're going to pick who you need to pick. So at the end of the day, it is still competitive. So no matter what
Yeah,
way you're doing it, you'll still need a competitive team. You're not just going to have someone there that you're nurturing who's not up to the grade with the standard that you're playing at.
totally. And it has to be, it's always down to performance, always. And thankfully, I played at the club when it was a lot more of the environment that I didn't fit in, but I played well. So therefore, I still got picked and I still performed, which gave me the opportunity to move to a club where it fitted me better and I performed even better at that club. So.
This is probably going to be a really stupid question because I probably know the answer because you've performed to a high level. But in regards to how I guess society is changing and what sort of sport looks like within schools and that sort of things, what's your opinion on the sort of removal of competitiveness within certain aspects of fitness?
Yeah, I think it is a tough question because you see it now at schools that everyone gets a medal for competing and all the pieces that we want everyone to have fun. And I do agree with that. But then what I do and I don't, because what created my competitive edge was I wanted the medal. I wanted to win and I wanted to fight to be the best. And actually, when I was upset and I lost, I learned what I needed to do to get better. And it gave me a drive to go and do extras and it gave me a drive to try and be better in certain aspects of my life. So I've got a little boy who's 4.5, turning 5 soon. And we raced to the car, for instance, and he went for a stage where he cried all the time if I won. So I started letting him win some of like quite a lot of time so that he was happy and didn't cry. And now we've got to a point where I let him win some of the time and I win some of the time, and we have to say well done to each other if they win, but I'll get you next time and going to work hard to get you. And yeah, I think it's an important lesson that you can't just compete and win every time. I think you have to have someone who won and then people who didn't, and the consequence of that is you either work harder to get to win or you don't, and you don't like competing.
Yeah, it is a hard one. I've just done a podcast with a guy in regards to trauma. So this one's completely lighter. I'm having a lot more fun, less deep conversation, which is great. But we're still getting some good stuff. But one of the things he was talking about was childhood trauma, and it was interesting that you
Yeah,
mentioned with your son that you let him win sometimes, and you beat him sometimes. Obviously, you could beat him every time if you really wanted to, but that's got
yeah,
its own negative concept on sport and fitness and that side of things, right?
totally. And I'm very conscious of that because the times I win, he hated it originally and was like, I don't want to race again. I never want to do it because it wasn't fun. But then if you let him win sometimes, he was so excited. He's like, I want to race you again, I want to race you again. And now we've got to the point where he's like, I won 3 races, you've won 4. Let's do another. We'll do another so I can get one. And like he's now getting to that point, which is great. So,
Yeah, which that again, which is that created happy competitiveness rather than like this desire to just destroy. Essentially, it's like I'm trying to
yeah,
become level, and it's good competition, right? I think that's something that I personally really admire with rugby from all the levels that I've seen it at. It's really hard hitting, it's really intense, but after the 80 minutes, everyone gets up and shakes hands. At the lower levels,
definitely.
they're in the clubhouse having beer and a curry together. Like it's very like we'll get you next time kind of vibe, which is for me makes it.
Definitely. And it was one of the things that stood out for me from rugby. So I was very sporty. I swam, I played football, did everything, and I was quite athletic. So I enjoyed it all and was decent enough at most. But the difference from sort of Saturday league, Sunday league football in Nottingham, where they'd have a stress and the parents would be losing their mind on the edges, and you'd lose, want to go off in a strop, and you're really annoyed, to rugby where you have to shake hands in a tunnel, you have to do 3 cheers, and then you go get a cone of chips and chat to each other after. It was day and night for me and for what I enjoyed. So that's why I was drawn to rugby from such a young age, because there were two different ways of doing it within sport.
And this sort of will lead on nicely into your business now, and this competitiveness. And for me, I think it's led to a lot of people becoming self-competitive, so like trying to better themselves. So they might run a marathon in 4 hours, then they want to run it in 3 hours
Yeah,
45, or they might want to run a marathon or whatever it might be. So for me, there's a bit of a balance. It's sort of gone away from the sheer the best of the best can compete, whereas now sort of everyone can compete within themselves when done correctly, right? And sort of
Definitely.
feeding in the right bit of competitiveness. So in regards to yourself, you've been doing this business for a few years now. What have you seen a shift in the types of clientele? Has it gone from high level to lower level? What's that looking like?
Yeah, definitely. So from early doors, very lucky that we got some penetration um, with some unbelievable organizations and sports people, and we had like Man U buy us stuff and Wimbledon tennis and some unbelievable things. Raheem Sterling got a leg compression and put it on his TikTok and things like that. You're like, wow, this is incredible. And generally, we saw like semi-pro slash pro athletes were our customers 4 or 5 years ago that were really taking it serious about leg compression and recovery and stuff. And I'd say there's been a huge shift, like you said, in this whole category. We were quite lucky that we got there early because I'd been in a professional sport and I'd seen recovery come in a few years before and how seriously people were starting to take it there. So me and my wife spoke that it would probably kick on if we could educate into the general population. And my missus liked CrossFit and marathons and different things and didn't know any of the stuff I was doing. So we knew it would sort of drip down. That was our thought. But now it's dripped down to, like you say, the everyday athlete or even just high performers. So a lot of our customer base are just people who are high flyers in the city or with their own businesses, and they don't perform at any level of sport. But what they do is they work exceptionally hard and they want to look after themselves to be the biggest and highest performer they can, and optimize their own performance. So in our cold water immersion space, we get loads of people, anywhere from 30 to 70 who buy our products. Whereas originally, 5 years ago, I'd be like, our target audience is 20 to 35 sports people. Whereas actually, it's not now. It's about anybody who's trying to be a high performer and sort of maximize their own capability.
Awesome. So talk to me about the benefits of water immersion then. What are the key benefits?
Yeah, so it's pretty incredible. It's a weird one because my whole career spent time trying to not do it because I hated the cold and hated ice baths and it killed my hands and feet and was a horrible part of the week. And then I finished and I got into it once I retired. And a lot of it was around the mental health benefits as much as the physical benefits. So physically as a man, if you have an ice bath in the morning first thing before you go and train, you'll get a spike in your testosterone, so you'll actually get better benefits from your training, which was really interesting for me. So I do it first thing in the morning as soon as I get up. You also get a 250% dopamine spike, which is the happy drug within our system. So basically, because you've overcome a really hard thing that you don't want to do. So I've been doing it for 2.5 years constantly. And every morning, it doesn't matter that I've done 600 ice baths. I look out the window and I look at the ice bath and I think, you bastard, like I do not want to go anywhere near you. Like I could just leave the house now and get on with my day. But the nice thing about it is it takes 4 minutes. So 5 minutes to dry myself off and get changed. And you feel incredible once you've done it because you're super proud of yourself. And then you get that shoot of dopamine, which is the happy drug, which makes you really happy for the rest of your day. It gives you a boost of energy. It basically gets rid of any fogginess in the morning when you're waking up. And then I know it also helps with my testosterone, so therefore my training will be better. I'll feel better just generally with my health. So yeah, there's loads of benefits. And then if you are not looking to do strength training and stuff, and you're looking at marathons and endurance, then you do it post-training because it also helps with muscle inflammation, etc. The opposite of when you're weightlifting, you want to sort of get that inflammation to build muscle. So there's two sort of different ways of doing it. But it's yeah, I have to say it's a pretty life-changing thing people get into, and our business has blown up in the last probably 2 years, and we sell lots of products, but a big part of that is the cold water immersion range and how seriously people take it now. So we've launched, like I created, so I'm like product development mainly because my brain works in figuring things out that I get really annoyed with. So keeping my ice bath cold really annoyed me. So I had to figure out how to keep it cold. I looked around the internet, there were $5,000 big chillers that you plug in. And I was like, I would never spend, well, I won't spend $5,000 on a big chiller for my little ice bath in the corner. That's 100 quid. So then I started looking into how we could create something and I started testing different things. And basically we landed on our mini chiller. And what it was a aquarium chiller for sea fish that I got repurposed with a filter to be able to clean, be able to do a bit more water than a normal sized tank. but it was at 1/10 of the cost of a big one. And we brought that to market, and the amount of people that love that, because you can now get your ice bath to 4 or 5 degrees, 3 degrees, and sit in it. But they take it seriously now. Like, it's a massive, massive category.
I'm yet to do an ice bath, so maybe I will.
Mate, it's life changing. Like, honestly, just start with a little pod just to get you going, like a 60, 80 quid one online. Fill it up with your hose pipe and leave it outside to drop to temperature overnight, and it's an unbelievable way to start your day. So.
Okay, maybe I'll do it to launch this podcast. That'll be
Yeah.
to show that it's
Exactly.
live. But yeah, no, I'm still like, the thought of cold is like I'm a big sauna guy, but yeah, I'm not going with cold yet.
I never was, and then because it's such a hard thing you're doing, it's such a like mental reward to it because you're so proud of yourself. You're just like, I just did that. Like, even though it's the same thing every day, you're like, I did not want to do that, and I did that. So you start your day on a real positive. So it is mentally a really incredible thing.
Do you think that's because you never want to do it?
Yeah, I honestly think it is. I think it's because it never gets easier, and it almost becomes addictive, weirdly, because you know you don't want to do it, but you know you'll feel so good when you've done it. You're sort of staring out the window at it like, well, I'm going to do it because I want to feel good, but I don't want to do it, so I have to get some good songs on next to me on my phone and get through it. But it's a really incredible thing. I definitely highly recommend it to people if they haven't tried it.
Nice, awesome. So what's next? Is it just more of the same, or are you looking at new products? What's next for you guys?
Yeah, so we've grown incredibly this year, on like 700% growth this year, which is pretty incredible and insane for us. And I'm always on product development. So we just launched an ice bath cleaner called No Zone Cleaner, which one of my biggest frustrations with my ice bath was once a week it got all grimy and sludgy in the water, and you have to change it. And it's a bit annoying. So figured out a special way to clean it that basically makes it last about 10 times longer. So we launched that. We're also in the process of coming to market with a sauna, so we can do hot, cold as well. So we've got a couple of different sauna options we're looking to launch in the next sort of 5-6 weeks. One is totally unique to us that we've been developing for about a year, which will be pretty cool when it comes out. And then there's lots of other things down the way. So we're going to go into different, couple of different categories, but all within optimization. So basically sports recovery or human optimization. So yeah, all our things are always around there.
Amazing. I always like to end the podcast with a hard question as the way as I started it. So it's more of a fun question though, in that sense. So in regards to sort of men's well-being and the men's space, is there anything that you feel is missing, or is there anything that you feel there needs to be more of? What's your thoughts on it as an overall?
I just think a huge one is the mental health. So I think a lot of my friends train, a lot of my friends are in okay shape, or some aren't. Some go to the pub and are not in great shape. But generally, the biggest thing most people I know struggle with is mental health. So I think there's a piece to be educated for men to understand that is a big problem, and it's totally normal as well for most men. And to understand that when you look at suicide rates, 75% of men, that shows you that we're not very good at talking and understanding our own mental health. Whereas I think my wife's very open and talks to her friends and discusses, whereas a lot of my friends don't. So I find myself now going out my way to ask how they're feeling and try and go a little bit deeper with my close friends and make sure I'm there if they want to talk to me. And vice versa, they check in with me, and if I'm having a tough time, I can have a discussion about it. But I'd say definitely some more education around men's mental health, because them stats is definitely an issue there. It's 75% of men with suicides.
Amazing. Joe, if people love what they've heard and they want to find ice baths, compassion, and massage guns, or even yourself, where's the best place to find you?
So my company's MyMaster, so you can look online, just type MyMaster in and you'll find it, or on Instagram and Facebook, it's at MyMaster, and then I'm Joe Gray, so again, it's at Joe Gray 2, so you can find me, and I'm trying to get better at it, because my wife's very good at it, but trying to get better at showcasing my day-to-day life and what I've learned and things around business, and also now I'm a professional rugby coach, things around my coaching as well. So
amazing. Joe, thank you so much for your time. It's greatly appreciated.
Cheers. Thanks very much, Liz.